It's a Grinch. Um, so I've brought out the Christmas shirts. They'll be appearing a little bit more frequently now. Um, which, yay, Christmas. Well, technically, for church people, we're in Advent right now, and then of course there's all the other holidays that land around the same time frame for various religions and customs and everything. So, fun there. Happy holidays. Happy whatever it is you celebrate. And if you don't celebrate, then happy having to deal with all of this. I'm sorry for those of you who have to put up with people who are like me and love Christmas. I am not obsessed with it though. Um, Although the giant ornaments in the background may argue that, may contradict that. But yeah. Okay. Time to talk about the other daimyos that are involved in Wano. I've already talked about the Shimosuke family in regards to both Zoro's section of the family, and then, of course, we have Yasuie's section of the family. Technically, that also includes Toko. I possibly will do a video about Toko later on in the series, near the end of it, because I want to save, like, Momo and Toko and Tama and Hiyori for, like, the end of the series for Wano, because they are the representation of, like, the future of Wano in regards to hopefully where Wano is heading down the line, for, like, this hopefully very bright future of Wano, give or take whether or not whatever the heck happens with Pluton. We'll find out. But this will be going over the rest of the daimyo families, which would be the Uzuki, Amatsuki, and Fugetsu families. Will be the three main ones that I will be discussing today, although the other ones will kind of get mentioned at times. So, as this is something that I did kind of go over when I talked about the Shimosuke family videos, there are, of course, the 5 different regions of Wano outside of the flower capital, and each of those regions had a different daimyo. And given what we've seen, we know that at least going back about a couple of generations to the time of Sukiyaki, or his parents, there were 5 daimyo families, there were 5 daimyo families, and then the ruling family, who was, of course, the Kozuki family. And those were, of course, the Shimosuke family, the Uzuki family, the Amatsuki family, the Fugetsu family, and the Kurozumi family. And as is one of the things that is pointed out when all of these are translated, 5 out of the 6 of them have moon in the name somewhere, and then it is the Kurozumi family name that is translated to black charcoal, which is, of course, then played off of by Hiyori at the end of it when she, during the Rakugo play, they do that Kurozumi was born to burn, which is specifically meant to be about Orochi himself, not Tama, not other members of the Kurozumi family who have done nothing wrong. I would say this also can apply to Kanjuro and can apply to Senimaru and Higurashi as well, and Orochi's grandfather, but not necessarily any of the other innocent members of the family who didn't do anything against the Kozuki family. As I said, I still want to find out if they're ever going to do something where Tama is able to reveal to Momo and Hiyori and the others that she is a Kurozumi and not be ostracized for it. I still want there to be some type of a payoff for that, given that is information that we as the audience know, but is maybe not necessarily known in the story yet. But the translations for these, when they are translated for the kanji, we have it that Kurozumi means light moon, Shimosuke means frost moon, which I went over in the Shimosuke videos when I was referring to, speaking about Ryuma. Frost moon, or November, is generally where that one is referred to as. Uzuki is the rain moon, which I think might be like a reference to like spring. Amatsuki is heaven moon, and of course Amatsuki is the family that Toki is descendant from, and I will reference that in this a little bit. And then Fugetsu is wind moon. Now, I don't know if all of these different moons have a reference to a certain month or a certain time of year, beyond just the frost moon is part of the reference to, November, for what it used to be referred to as in Japan. But those are generally the way that those names are done, and that's kind of like this hint at the beginning when we're given all of these names, and it's just like, yeah, as far as we're aware, the Amatsukis are kind of dead at this point in time because we don't know of any current living members beyond the two obvious ones, but we'll get to them. And then the rest of them possibly have some descendants that are still alive, but that's a little bit left up for debate. The Kurozumis, as I said, they have Tama at the moment, and there could be other members of the Kozumi family out there. They just have been in hiding because first of everything that happened with Sukeyake and with the Daimyo at the time, that was Orochi's grandfather, and then everything that happened with Orochi and everything, they kind of possibly just want to hide the fact that they're a Kurozumi, so I hope that there ends up being a resolution to that. The Kozuki family, of course, have Momo and Hiyori at the moment, and Sukeyake as the current living members. The Shimosuke family technically has Zoro, is a descendant of the Shimosuke family, but he's not like in line for anything. And then there is Toko, who was Yasuie's adopted daughter, and she could technically be able to be considered a member of the Shimosuke family and could be raised to become a future daimyo or something along those lines, which I think would be an interesting way of doing it. The Uzuki family, there is a current living member of the family that we are aware of, and I will get to him later. And then the Amatsuki family seemed to be one of the ones that got killed off by Orochi's grandfather about, 70-something years ago, 80-something years ago, when everything was happening with Orochi's grandfather just prior to Sukiyake's birth. And the only two living members of the family that we are aware of are, again, Hiyori and Momonosuke, because they are Toki's children. And Toki was not a descendant of the more recent members of the Amatsuki family. She was one of their ancestors from 800 years ago because, of course, she's been alive since the Void Century and has been jumping forward in time, for the last 800 years. 780 years, if you want to go back, however many, 770-something years, whatever you want to do. Via logistics of timeline shenanigans. So those are about it. And then, of course, and then the Fugetsu family, we don't know of any living members of the Fugetsu family at the moment. We know about a couple of other members of the Fugetsu family, but not any that are currently alive as far as we're aware. So, as I said earlier, the daimyos are, of course, the ones who are in charge of taking care of the different regions of Wano, and they are beholden to the shogun. They follow his rules and everything. He is the supreme ruler of Wano, and then the, daimyos are kind of underneath him and his family. And I would assume there's been some various marriages between one family and another and stuff like that, for alliance purposes, for different things like that. That wouldn't surprise me. That's the way a lot of those types of things tended to work, for political and dynastic marriages. And of course, they each took care of their own regions. Kind of the way that I believe we kind of had it figured out was that, of course, the Kozuki family is, of course, in charge of the flower capital. Originally, it was the Shimosuke family was in charge of Ringo. And then the Uzukis, I believe, were the ones who were in charge of Udon. The Fugetsu family seemed to be the one that was in charge of the Kibi region. And the Amatsuki family seemed to be the ones that were originally in charge of the Hakumai region. And then, of course, from what we've determined, the Kurozumi family seemed to be the one that were in charge of the Kuri region originally. Now, we don't know if these families stretch all the way back to the Void Century. A couple of them do, but not all of them. And from what it seemed to be, Orochi's grandfather managed to at least kill off a good chunk of the Amatsuki family, and then the Shimosuke family had a member of their line go over and become the new daimyo of the Hakumai region, and that was probably Yasuie's father, grandfather, something like that, and then Yasuie became the daimyo later. And that's why 2 of the regions ended up being ruled by a member of the Shimosuke family. It seemed to be the way that went. In regards to the different families overall, the Amatsuki family is the one that we have no current living members of, except for Momonosuke and Hiyori, as I said. Toki was a member of the family, but she is more of an ancestor of the Amatsuki family as opposed to more of a current member of the family. And that line seemed to have been pretty much killed off, probably by the crows, by Orochi's grandfather. They seemed to have been the ones who were in charge of the Hakumai region, from what we could tell, simply just because the Shimosuke family seems to have a very, very strong tie to the Ringo region, so why they were the Hakumai region had to be explained somehow, and that seems to be the best explanation for headcanon. From what we understand for the history of the Amatsuki family, at least 800 years ago, the Amatsuki family lived in Wano, and somehow, supposedly, Toki seemed to have been born outside of Wano, and then because of, like, the mission that was given to her, possibly by Joy Boy, possibly by one of the other members of Joy Boy's crew at the time. Her parents may have been on his crew. We're not sure. We'll probably get more of that information in the flashback. Whenever we get the Void Century flashback, we'll probably see Toki be given her orders to start her journey, to get her way to the future. And Toki started to travel into the future with her abilities. And her parents may have originally been from Wano, and then they may have been outside of Wano when everything happened in the Void Century, during the big war between Joy Boy's crew and the future members of the world, future founders of the world government, the 20 Kings. And Toki's parents may have just not been able to get back to Wano, and then for 800 years, as she was traveling further and further into the future, Wano was still closed. So it would have been very difficult for her to be able to get there in the first place, let alone be able to physically get there and then get inside the country. And then, of course, eventually Odin and everything else. Inside Wano, the Amatsuki were, of course, a very powerful family. They were very loyal supporters of the Kozuki family, of the royal family at the time. They were very honored and everything else like that. They were the daimyos of one of the regions, as I said, probably Hakumai. And then more recently, just prior to Sukiyaki's birth, the head of the Kurozumi family managed to, in trying to seize the shogunate, assassinated the leader of the Amatsuki family as part of his scheme. That's the last bits of information we have about the Amatsuki family. There's the possibility, I guess, that Momo and Hiyori may find another member of the Amatsuki family. And we currently don't know, or at least at the time of the recording of this, we do not know who the current daimyo of the Hakumei region has become. It's probably just one of Odin's other retainers, although I don't know which one it could be. We know that Denjiro is now the daimyo of the Kibi region. We know that Inarashi has been made the daimyo of the Kuri region. As of recording this, I'll give you a hint of this, don't know who the current daimyo of the Udon region is, but we'll see how that ends up going. I think it would be appropriate if it was Kawamatsu, because he was in Udon for so long. So there's a possibility there, but we don't know. Although there is a current living member of the Uzuki family who was a member of who was in Udon and is still alive as far as we're aware. So that's a possibility there, but we're not really familiar with him. For the other possible ones for a daimyo of the Hakumei region, that could now be kind of like the successor. of the Amatsuki family. Kiku is a possibility. I don't think we've seen Kiku yet in the cover story. I think Neku Mamushi is currently hanging out with the Yakuza, along with Hyogoro, who will be part of the next group that I talk about for the Yakuza. Ashura died, Izo died, so I wouldn't expect either of them to be there. Kiku may also be the one who could be the next daimyo of the Ringo region, so that's a possibility there. Shinobu was not given a part of the daimyo. She's not doing that. She's currently training Tama, and probably going to train some other new members of the elite ninja defense force that'll be in charge of protecting Momo. So we'll see what happens there. Don't know. We'll see, there's a possibility there that maybe down the line it could be Toko that is the one who will be in charge of the Hakumai region to kind of like succeed her father, eventually, to succeed her father and everything, but we'll see. And as I said, the Amatsuki family are one of the 3 Wano families that we know who were around during the Void Century. The other 2, of course, being the Kozuku family, because they were the rulers at the time, and they were the ones who created the poneglyphs. And then the Shimotsuki family were around way back when. Whether or not that was Ryuma at the time is a bit left up for debate. Moving on to the Fugetsu family. The Fugetsu family were renowned throughout Wano until they were eliminated by Kozuki, by Orochi and Kaido, because Kaido killed the last known member of the Fugetsu family, and they ruled over Kibi. Kibi is the region that we spent the least amount of time with, and as I just stated, Denjiro is now currently the daimyo of Kibi. And I don't expect them to have Kinemon be a daimyo of any of the regions. He is the one who is closest to Momonosuke. Raizo is the one that I was forgetting for the rest of the members of the former Nine Red Scabbards. Raizo could possibly be one of the members, one of the new daimyo for either the Hakumai or the Ringo regions, or possibly, Udon. Again, this is being recorded before we know who the Udon daimyo is. Although, if I am correct in any of these guesses, then yay. If not, oh well. It's someone else that's now the daimyo. I don't know. They're going to have someone else be the daimyo. They're going to make one of the geishas the daimyo. That's the shot in the dark guess. A daimyo of one of the regions. Sure. No, it'll be the lady that was playing the shamisen and training Robin at the beginning of the arc. That's the one who's going to be a daimyo for one of the other regions. Let's get a female daimyo in here. I don't know. That'd be fun. A female that's why I want like Kiku to be one of them, be one of the daimyos, because that would like kind of fill that role. But the Fugetsu family had been in charge of Kibi up until about 20 years ago when the last one was killed. And from what we understand, their history is they were, they have been daimyos for at least a couple of generations. We don't know exactly how far back that family line goes. Again, ways that you could be made a daimyo is by, of course, you succeed a member of your family who was the daimyo. That's generally the way that it was done, although if your family is disgraced, like what happened with the Kurozumis, they can be kicked off. And, they can be, have their rights as daimyos and everything, their privileges and everything stripped of them. And then the shogun could promote a new daimyo, a new family to take over. Or in the case of stuff, if they're all dead, then find new ones who can take over and be able to handle ruling all of the different, the different tasks of ruling over these different regions. And be able to report back to the shogun. In the current case, Momonosuke. So that's a good chunk of what could be done there. In regards to members of the Fugetsu family, we know of 2. The first one is the swordsmith, Fugetsu Kisaburo. Now, from what we understand, this specific member of the family was probably around a while ago, because we don't know exactly when they were around. Although I like the fact that now 2 of the different families that are associated with Wano have also had, actually 3, have had sword makers in them, because of course you have Sukiyake, who is, a swordsmith, and then you had Kozaburo, Shimasuke Kozaburo, who was a swordsmith, and now you have Fugetsu Kisaburo, who is a swordsmith. And he made the blade Yakuza Kasen, which is the blade that is currently being wielded by Fujitora. It kind of gives off Wano vibes a little bit anyway. And he is the one who currently wields that sword. That information was revealed recently it was a Viva Carter and SBS, one of the two. But that was revealed recently. And again, we don't know how far back this sword goes. Kisaburo could have very easily been one of the other members that left Wano 55 years ago with the group that was with Kozaburo and Zoro's grandmother that left with them. He could have been part of that group and may have been a friend of Kozaburo and had gone off and ended up going somewhere else in the world. And eventually his sword ended up in the hands of, Fujitora. He could have left Wano, further in the past. And it could just be that they don't actually know the history of the sword. Kozaburo or Fujitora may not actually know who made his sword. He just may know what it's called and that it's from Wano, but he may not know who made it in the first place. So that's a possibility there. Then we get more into the recent history for the Fugetsu family. There is, of course, the Fugetsu Omotsubi, who was the former daimyo of the Kibi region. And I will get a little bit more into detail about him in a moment, but he was 44 years old 20 years ago, so he was born 64 years ago. And he is one of the shogun, one of the daimyos who was around just after the death of Odin, and was one of the 3 ones that tried to stand up to Kaido and ended up being trapped in the cave with Yamato. And I'll get to that information in a moment. The other one, the last one for the families, is the Uzuki family. And the Uzuki family had ruled over the Udon region, which is, of course, where the Udon prison mine currently is. And as of the recording of this video, currently the castle is being rebuilt there. And as I said, we don't know who the current daimyo is. That hasn't been revealed to us yet. I would still say my best guess is going to be on Kawamatsu or Raizo. Putting more money on Kawamatsu just because he's more familiar with the prison from having been there for so long and trapped. He may have some ideas about prison reform. How about you don't chain me to the wall and feed me poisoned fish? That's a good upgrade. Let's not do that. So there's the possibility there. And in regards to the Uzuki family of the past, as I said, we know 2 members of the Uzuki family. One is Uzuki Tempura, who was the former daimyo of the Udon region. And he was 45 years old 20 years ago at his death, so he would have been 65 if he was still alive. And given the way that One Piece works, he would have still been in fighting age, good range for fighting to be able to help against Kaido if that had come along. I mean, like, Hirogoro was just way older than that, and he was part of the fight and everything, so there's that. To be fair, Brook is older than all of them, and he was part of the fight as well. So there's that. But Brook is Brook, and he has his own rules that he follows. So there's that. And then the other member of the family, who I'm going to talk about in a second, is Uzuki Namida, who he was a prisoner at the Udon mines, at the Udon prison when Luffy was there. And we see him He is, as I said, he's one of the prisoners there in the mine, and he's there when Luffy is there, and he witnesses when Luffy and Kid beat up Dobon and Daifugu and all of that stuff. He, witnesses all of this, and he witnesses, Luffy and, working with Hirogoro and everything else like that. And then, when Queen uses the plague bullets, he's one of the ones that gets infected with the mummy virus, and he sees Luffy willingly gets himself infected in order to, give this, uses it to, help the prisoners and help them be able to fight, give them the, help them rally and their, to fight against Kaido and everything. And he is moved by Luffy's speech and actually cries. And so, we don't see him again after that, but I would assume, since he's stated to have been a samurai, he may have been a part of the raid on Onigashima, but we just don't ever see him there. Or if he is, he's just one of the many other hundreds of samurai that showed up to help Luffy and the others, one of the other prisoners, former prisoners who helped fix the ships and helped get supplies and everything, and was part of the group that was there. So that's a good possibility, but we haven't seen anything of him yet. And given the fact that we don't spend a lot of time with him, I don't expect him to be the Daimyo, but I would like it if we see him in the cover page series. Again, I'm recording this before we see what's inside of Udon, so it's the possibility that he might be there, and I will just look either stupid depending on how this goes, or it's like, well, she just could have recorded this ahead of time, and I'm just like, no, I recorded this 2 weeks ahead of time, so I don't know. It's a guess. If you want an idea for how early I record some of these, it's like these just work better to do it this way. And now we reach where we have the ends of the Daimyo, the ends of the last Daimyo that were in Wano. And this mainly just goes over the ends of Amatsubi, Tempura, and Ushimaru. Now, I've already talked about Ushimaru, but these three all die in the same way because 20 years ago, just after the death of Odin, the three of them, along with Yasue, although Yasue is not part of the group that goes and is part of the raid on Onigashima, or this second attempt to try to destroy Kaido, he's not part of that group. He ends up staying behind. I don't remember if we ever get a reason why, but we do know that he has survivor's guilt about that. But the other three Daimyo, as I said, Amatsubi, Ushimaru, and Tempura are ones that go to Wano, and they try to attack Kaido. They attempt to assassinate him. I think they try to assassinate Orochi as well, but that doesn't go well. And they end up getting locked in the cave, sealed into the cave, on Onigashima, and then later Yamato is thrown in there with them. And only this plate of one, it's Kaido trying to play a cruel game with them and with Yamato to try to show them that they're no better than he is. It's like, if they know that you're my child, they're just going to treat you just like you're my child. They're just going to try to kill you anyway, regardless of whether or not you're a child, because you're my child. And of course, he does this, he throws Yamato in there, along with only one bowl of food between the four prisoners, as well as swords for them to fight over it. And of course, all three daimyos prove Kaido wrong. They are able to get out of their chains to a degree. We know Yamato still has the cuffs on his wrist, but the other, they're able to at least. Those three didn't have devil fruits as far as we're aware, so even if it was Sea Prism Stone, they wouldn't have been affected by it. And exploding cuffs or not, they weren't planning on leaving the island anyway. So what ends up happening is, of course, they are all trapped in the cave, and they give the food to Yamato, of course, because according to the samurai code, they don't need it, which logic and biology dictate otherwise, dudes. And what ends up happening is, of course, Yamato ends up revealing to them that he has Odin's logbook. And they're all just like, oh my god, you have what? And Yamato's like, well, I have the logbook, but I can't really read it very well. I can't read very well, and they end up helping Yamato with reading through the logbook. And I love this because, again, we get hints of what's in the logbook during the Odin flashback bit with stuff that's with Roger and with Whitebeard, and of course there's so much more that's written there in the book that's not actually shown in the manga and in the anime and everything. And then there's, everything that happens with Laugh-Tale, and there's, like, how much information about Laugh-Tale is in the book and everything, but was not revealed to us in the flashback because Oda and storytelling and everything. And so it's like Yamato is getting to sit there and read this, and all three of these guys are there, reading along with him and finding out about this amazing journey that Odin has been on. That Odin was on even, prior to leaving Wano, and then he was outside of Wano, and then making his way back to Wano and everything. So they're getting all of this information. And the three of them, the three Daimyo at the time, are just like, okay, we know what we need to do. And what they do is, after 10 days have passed, and, with Kaido, he left the four of them to die. He left them for dead, basically, not even caring that one of them is Yamato. And what happens is, of course, the three samurai are able to at least cut the cuff, or at least break the chain, so Yamato can at least be free outside of the cave to a degree, that he can't leave the island, but at least can go around at least be around the island, but can't leave the island, which I guess is slightly better than being stuck in a cave. And they then slice their way out of the cave, which is just, like, for them, it's like slicing through butter, which I just love. And because, again, it demonstrates their strength and everything, which I love. And they go to confront Kaido. However, that's where they met their end. In another attempt to try to defeat Kaido. And in the end, while it may seem fruitless, it wasn't, because their actions, as I said when I talked about Ushimaru, their actions inspire Yamato. Their actions are what give Yamato the strength to keep going and to become stronger and to, have, to train and train and train. And yes, he keeps going, and he keeps getting beat up by Kaido. He keeps getting beaten, bruised, and bloody, and broken boned, and almost killed so many times by his own father over the next 20 years. But he never stops. He never gives up. And part of that is the legacy that these three daimyo left behind in their last actions of saving Yamato. And I love that. That is just... I love that is kind of represented there, and that, of course, all of their actions are culminating in the fact that now Yamato was able to help Luffy and Momonosuke and all of their allies, their crews and their allies and everything, in trying to defeat Kaido, and in their success of defeating Kaido. Yamato was a part of that. The samurai's actions were a part of that. Their decisions to not hurt Yamato simply because he was Kaido's child proved that they were obviously better than Kaido in that regard, but it also showed Yamato that there are still good people out there, not just Odin, who Yamato was already admiring, but also these three who know what his father has done. Who knows that his father had killed Odin, that his father has caused all of these problems in Wano, and had just locked these three up in here. And they still chose to show Yamato mercy and friendship, and I love that. And that's just such a great thing. I love that. I love how that's illustrated in that regard. So, that seems like a very good place to end this. With the fact that, the legacy of these last three daimyo of Wano, of three of the last four daimyos of Wano from the time of Odin, that their legacy is Yamato and lives on in Yamato, because now Yamato is traveling around and getting to see the places that they had once been daimyos of. He's been to the he's been to the Kibi region where the Fugetsu family had been from. He is now currently in the Udon region where the Uzuki family is from. And soon he will be heading into both the Hakumai and then the Ringo regions to see where the Shimotsuki family had been from. And get to see these lands that he has read about, but hasn't really gotten the chance to go and see, and now is getting that chance. So we're gonna, Yamato is kind of carrying on this legacy to a degree. And of course, throughout Yamato's cover story, we are having it revealed who the other daimyos are of these regions, who the new daimyos are of these regions. And I will probably mention them later on, because, whenever the heck I get around to Momonosuke, and of course for the other scabbards who I haven't done videos about with, I've already done videos on Inarashi and Nekomamushi, so I won't be doing videos about them again, but, stuff about them will be brought up in the other videos when I talk about the other scabbards, because I am going to talk about the scabbards in this series, and specifically if they ended up being made daimyos of these other regions, that will get mentioned when I talk about them. And then, again, down the line, by the time I get to where I talk about Momonosuke as his adult self, I will be able to then mention he made this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, the daimyos of the different regions. So I'll be able to do that. So that's what I have here. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and I hope you have a good holiday season so far, and for the rest of the year, and just a good beginning for next year. So, bye.